Last couple of days, Oliver Quick lives in my head rent-free. Since the movie reveals little about his background, I can't help but wonder what led him to become such a psychopath. From what we do know about his family and upbringing, it seems like he had a fairly ordinary and decent life. So, what was actually wrong with Oliver? Saltburn is one of the most disturbing movies I've seen recently. It is visceral, disgusting, but also a unique expression of the blurred lines between hatred and love. And Oliver is the focal point of it all.
I just need you to understand how much I love you.
At first glance, he seems like an awkward scholarship kid who's struggling to make any friends. And throughout his time in school, he has eyes on the popular and well-loved student, Felix Catton. They quickly became good friends, and Felix supported Oliver when he found out about his parents' addiction issues. And even when Oliver's father died, Felix was there for him. But the things really start to get interesting when Felix asks Oliver to come stay with his family in Saltburn. This is where we see Oliver's darker side. We learn that he's a deeply obsessed sociopath and would do anything to possess what he's fixated on. It turns out that he actually punctures Felix's tire just to help him later. And after becoming friends, he lies about his parents and their drug addiction. Even when Felix starts to pull away, he makes up a story about his father's tragic death to keep him close. And one of the most distinctive characteristics of sociopaths is their use of manipulation and controlling behavior to get people to do what they want. They actually know what is right and what is wrong, but they don't care. In fact, the first scene between Oliver and Farley is something that is easily forgotten, but it actually tells us who Oliver is. In the scene, Farley criticizes Oliver for his repetitive use of the word thus and says that Oliver's writing lacks sophistication and style. But instead of accepting Farley's feedback, Oliver defends his choice by arguing that the only important thing is the substance. So rather than conforming to stylistic expectations, he just wants to make sure he gets his message out there and reaches his goals. And this disregard serves as a metaphor for Oliver's broader approach to life. He is willing to break societal rules and engage in morally questionable behavior if it serves his ultimate objectives. For him, the ends justify the means. So what was his endgame? I mean, many people argue that Oliver's endgame was to capture Saltburn, but I don't think that's true because Oliver had no idea about Saltburn until he arrived there. I think his desire and obsession was all about Felix and what he symbolized. It wasn't solely about Felix as a person, but rather about Felix as a concept. Because Felix had a title and a castle, he had that irresistible charisma. He was handsome, kind, and rich. He was the aristocracy. He was the flower that butterflies and bees desired. And as a member of the middle class, Oliver wanted to consume them. Just as the old saying goes, you are what you eat. That's why he drank Felix's bathtub water, and that's why he drank Venetia's blood, because Venetia was a part of that concept too. But when his lies exposed, Oliver's plans comes to an end. Once again, Felix pulls himself away from Oliver, but this time demands him to leave Saltburn, and it crushes Oliver's sense of control. Despite his efforts to change Felix's mind, he rejects him once more. In that moment, Oliver realizes he'll never have Felix. He was so desperate to regain control over Felix, so unsurprisingly, he kills him. This act stems from a belief that by killing Felix, he can somehow permanently possess him. Deep down, he knew that Felix is gone forever. That's why he had sex with his grave, to have him in his death. But why? I think Oliver's obsession with Felix suggests a psychological need to elevate his own identity. He's all about absorbing every piece of Felix, and by doing so, he thinks he could somehow elevate himself. And it actually makes sense when you think about where Oliver comes from. Growing up in such humble surroundings, there's this hunger for more, a craving for the kind of glamour and privilege that Saltburn and the Catton family represent. It's like he's trying to fill this void in his own identity by latching onto Felix and everything he stands for. Because Oliver was that average guy, someone often overlooked and seen as odd by his peers at school. And he yearned for acceptance, especially from someone who have all the things society thinks are important, like money, status, and charisma. That's where Felix comes in. Felix was like the perfect example of everything Oliver wishes he could be. That's why he loved him. That's why he hated him. If you take a closer look, you'll see that Oliver beaming with joy at the birthday bash, enjoying the spotlight and admiration from everyone. But in a blink, his happiness fades when he realizes they've forgotten his name, leaving him visibly downcast and let down. And I think that moment gives us a peek into Oliver's yearning for acceptance within the high-class society. So, after Felix's death, Oliver continues his manipulations and lies. Farley tries to place some of the blame for Felix's death on Oliver, but Oliver reveals to the family that Farley did drugs at the party. And in a fit of rage, Sir James kicks Farley out of the house. Still, some people are starting to see Oliver's real face. Venetia confronts with Oliver and tells he is a moth who's drawn to shiny things yet cannot help but put holes in everything he touches. But in the next morning, unsurprisingly, Venetia is found dead in the bath. At this point, Sir James overwhelmed by the chaos. Deep down, he knew that Oliver has a negative effect on the family. So he pleads with Oliver to leave Saltburn and offers him money to depart. At first, Oliver refuses that offer and insists on staying to support Felix's grieving mother Elspeth. But eventually, Sir James's persistence pays off, and Oliver reluctantly agrees to leave. But Oliver's story doesn't end here. The movie flashes to a few years later, where Oliver encounters Elspeth at a small coffee shop. At the same time, we learn through newspapers that Sir James has died from an illness. So Oliver picks up his plans where he left off. After they catch up, she invites him to go back to Saltburn. And sometime later, she is seen on her deathbed, with only Oliver to care for her. Only then, he admits to Elspeth that he caused all the tragedy in her family. He confesses to poisoning Felix and planting the idea of suicide in Venetia's mind. Meanwhile, he manages to get Elspeth to sign over all her assets to him, effectively allowing him to inherit Saltburn. After that, he pulls out Elspeth's breathing tube and let her die. So in the end, Oliver's acquisition of Saltburn becomes closure for him, a mark of his triumph over the aristocratic world he once admired. It becomes a physical manifestation of Oliver's obsession towards Felix. It isn't only a symbol of material success, but also a means for Oliver to validate his own self-worth and identity. In this context, his celebration through naked dancing represents a victory over the aristocracy. We see that he never felt bad or shy about the path he took. And those 4 stones on the puppet box weren't there in memory of the Cattons. They were Oliver's trophies. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a comment, give a like, and click to subscribe. Your support will greatly help the mysterious algorithm work its magic. And if you want to support me personally, you can join the channel by using the join button. See you next time.